So hello and welcome. My name's Steve Nobel, and today I'm speaking with Elizabeth Brown on Dowsing the Doctor Within. So Elizabeth Brown has a diverse background with careers in media, film, interior design, and international relocation. After experiencing debilitating effects of electromagnetic pollution in an office environment, she co-founded and run a successful geopathic stress consultancy. And interestingly, when I read her bio, her great-grandfather was a water dowser, which I'll probably ask Elizabeth about that. So Elizabeth is the author of Dowsing, the Ultimate Guide to the 21st Century. She was given an award by the British Society of Dowsers for achievement in this written work. And in 2014, she was honoured a second time by the Society and given the Floyd Cup for outstanding contribution in the field of health dowsing. And if you want to check out Elizabeth's website, it's causativeDiagnosis.com. And there will be a link going out with this podcast. So, hi Elizabeth.
Hi there.
So, just to let people know that you're in an interesting location. You're down there in Monaco, that tiny little principality. How's life with the flash cars?
Yes, life goes on.
Life goes on. Okay.
Slightly restricted, but yes.
Yes. So you've had an interesting set of careers. Can you describe how you came to dowsing?
I mean, the very, very first time I was handed a pair of dowsing rods by the son of a miner in Kent, and they used to use dowsing down the mines in the county of Kent, and I was just handed them, and immediately they started to spin round. And I thought, ooh, what's interesting? What's that?
Yeah.
But didn't think any more of it until I lived in America for 6 years. And I met an extraordinary man who taught the Native Americans their lost arts. And he taught me to dowse in one night. And when I came back to the UK, I joined the British Society of Dowsers and trained more formally. And I've been dowsing now for over 30 years, but it was 10 years before I felt confident enough or qualified enough to actually sort of unleash myself on the public and go totally professional, which I have been now for 20 years, well, over 20 years, a professional dowser.
And you see clients from all over the world, I think.
Well, C is sort of a bit metaphorical at the moment. I have clients in over 30 countries, but of course now we're all working, we're working at distance. And yes, I can do whatever I do in person, I can do it at distance. So that's no barrier.
Yeah, that's great. So I had a session with you, I don't know how long ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think. And I feel it's quite profound. I have been following up a lot of your suggestions and guidance, which is great. Here's my Civica.
Well done.
Which I really like, and various other things. So can you say something about the scope of causative diagnosis, the kind of work you do mostly?
Well, it came about when I was going out and about around the country. That's Britain, by the way, doing the environmental energy work, whether it's geopathic stress or electromagnetic pollution in people's homes. And it fascinated me when we finished working with people, I would follow up in a couple of weeks and say to them, well, how are you? And they'd say, oh, fantastic, best night's sleep I've ever had. And some would say, well, I think I'm better. Some things are better. And others would say, no, don't feel any difference at all. And I decided there had to be some way of measuring this. And so I processed what I call now health readings, because when you're dowsing, you can quantify anything. As long as you have an agreed scale in place, you can really quantify anything. So I started to measure people's health readings and immune system readings before and after the session. And that's what started, well, why? What caused this? What happened? Why didn't this person get better? And my readings became more and more sophisticated, measuring either processes in the body or organs in the body, or mental, emotional, psychological, spiritual. whether there be secondary gain, or whether there were completely different issues going on. I mean, geopathic stress is never the be all and end all. It's only one small part of a very big picture. And eventually, the whole causative diagnosis process was driven by clients who'd start to come to me and say, well, I've got cancer. What caused my cancer? And it was them pushing this, what caused this? What else can I do? And I realized there was just such a huge gap, really, because I think it's something like 50% of the population on average, it has some sort of chronic metabolic disease. And of course, the medical profession they don't treat, or they don't address chronic metabolic disease in terms of looking at the causative factors. And a very wonderful doctor once said to me one day, if, say, for example, with a skin condition, the only way you're going to cure a skin condition is finding out what the causes are. And then I went to Australia on a business trip, and I was in Melbourne, and a woman came to me and asked if I would see her. She'd heard about what I do, and she had been given 6 months to live, 3 months previously. 3 months previously. And she had leukemia, and they said it was terminal leukemia. And she said, I want to know what caused it. So I worked with her in a hotel room in Melbourne. And the main causative factor I dowsed on was her body. She had huge levels of agrochemicals in her body. And she said, you don't know this, but I don't live in Melbourne, actually. I live in New South Wales, and I live in an area where they spray crops. And I went through the whole process. Of course, that wasn't the only causative factor. There were other issues in a relationship with nutritional issues and diet and mental, emotional stress. And so I put a report together, and I came back to the UK, and she phoned me, I think it was about 3 months later, and she said, I took your information, I went to a clinic, they did an analysis, and they told me that my body was saturated with something called Roundup. And of course, at the time, actually, because this is 20 years ago, I didn't know what Roundup was. Of course, now everybody knows what Roundup and glyphosate is and does. And she said the clinic detoxed me, and my bloods had normalized for the first time. And she went on to live for at least 8 years. I lost touch with her after a while. But 8 years, and it was just those key pieces of information that I'm able to access and give to people, should they follow up on those, that they're life transforming, and it certainly was for Anne.
Amazing. Can you say some of the, or explain some of the external causes in the environment, like agrochemicals in the body? I guess there are a lot of other things like heavy metals and all kinds of things. What do you find is really problematic in clients?
Well,
externally?
I hate to put boundaries on it. I hate to put any limitations on it whatsoever, because I'm found what I'm meant to find. I do have lists. I used to do it all in my head. I can't do that now, but because it's the scope is just so broad. Yeah. But essentially, there are three main categories: is it a crisis of toxicity, a crisis of nutrition, or mental, emotional, spiritual, psychological, inappropriate programming. So that those are the three very broad categories, and under those there are hundreds of subcategories, starting with really precursors, pre-birth, preconception, other lifetimes, going through to levels of toxins in the body from either agrochemicals or industrial chemicals or environmental chemicals, leisure, sports and leisure toxins. What else? Oh, yes, of course. The work environment and exposure to to toxins from the work environment, then all the way through pathogens, nutrition, diet, imbalances in the body. And then we start to get in more vague areas. I mean, I've done accessing stuff like radiation from Chernobyl, and I mean, it's just really, really strange and odd things going on. There's also areas you really need to be very careful to look at, things like secondary gain. I mean, I specialize in cancer, and a lot of the cancer cases that I see, there is some sort of secondary gain that people are not willing to let go of. So it's not an exact science. I am accessing the information field of the client. I'm also working with quite high levels of consciousness to access whatever their body needs in order to return them back to balance. And back to balance really is the only thing I can claim, as I'm not medically qualified.
What would be examples of secondary gain in an illness that people would be holding on to? You mentioned cancer, but is it things like attention?
I can give you two examples. One was a woman she had breast cancer, and sadly her husband was a sort of playboy character. Every time she got sick and had the cancer, he would cease his activities. And then when she got better, he would go off again, having affairs. And she began to understand when she was sick how to control him. So that's one. Another one was a young girl in her 20s, I would say, that had a brain tumor. And what was driving her was the fact that her father had left her mother when she was a very young child, and she was the one that was responsible for her young brothers and sisters. And what she felt that she'd lost her childhood completely, it was taken away from her. And so she was punishing her father every time she saw how agonized he was when the brain tumor would stop being active. He was so absolutely agonized. That was her form of punishment. So those are just two examples. It's very powerful.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like seeking revenge on someone by doing, by creating stuff in the body, isn't it? It's quite amazing, really. What about nutrition? Because nutrition's a vast area. I know, like here we're gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, grain-free. When I first started, I thought, what am I going to eat? I'm going to eat anything. But actually, I feel quite healthy. Could you say something generally about nutrition, the main kind of problems you might find?
I have when I was a child, you ate what you ate what was put in front of you, and nobody had any issues of sensitivities or actually real allergies, which I term which really come under the heading of really extreme life-threatening. Most people's are sensitivities to food, or the chemicals which are now in food, or the not just agrochemicals, but all sorts of different chemicals. It's about just retraining people, just really thinking about what they're eating, but also how they're preparing the food. People using microwaves, and I don't understand it completely denatures food at the molecular level. But it's also nutrition. I've had because most 90% of nutrition is I'm going to say utter rubbish, because it's not natural nutrition with all the cofactors that you find in food. It's often more than often synthesized within a laboratory, and they say, the molecule's the same, but it's not. And so you're eating nutrition, artificial nutrition, vitamins that are made in a laboratory from petrochemicals. And so there's only about 10% of nutrition out there that actually is plant or food based. And I'm I'm a real just fan of finding the best nutrition, the most excellent nutrition that's compatible with the body, and the body recognizes, that is absorbed into the body and also bioavailable to the body. And the number of cases I've had over the years of people who have been taking unwittingly synthetic nutrition, and I said, no, because I can calibrate then how much it is in their best interest, whether it's 3 out of 10 or 10 out of 10, or how much it's in their detriment. And often it's more in their detriment than it is in their benefit. And the number of people I've said, stop taking these, because they're doing your body more harm than good. They're entraining the body in the wrong way. They've stopped this dodgy nutrition, and they've made miraculous recoveries. So it's not always about taking things. Sometimes it's about not taking things.
Yeah. What about gut absorption? This could be a big thing for some people. Is the body able to assimilate? Is this something you also measure?
I don't rule anything out. If that's an issue, then the universe will access that for me. Whatever it is, I access. And what I do in the beginning, because I'm looking at causative, contributory, and trigger factors behind chronic metabolic disease. And what I do first is determine how many factors. So there may be, in a case of cancer, for example, 4 causative factors, 1 contributory factor, and 1 trigger factor. Everybody's recipe, if you like, is different. And so I know how many factors I need to find, and I don't stop until I've actually determined exactly what they are, and I get the okay from the universe.
There's 2, I remember in our session, 2 areas you asked me about. One was dental work, like root canals, which I think seemed to be an important area. And the other one was like vaccines growing up as a child, up to now. What about these kind of like vaccines in the body generally, and also dental work? Are these major areas?
I always, when I'm taking a client's history, always go through their dental history, but because there are some really red light areas, and not just the current dental work, but if they've had, say, mercury amalgams removed in their past, and the mercury has either been inhaled during that process, or splinters of mercury or amalgam have become lodged in the sinus passages. But there's other stuff too. The big area of controversy is now it has been for a long time, is root canals. And I always check root canals, because there are dental surgeons who believe you actually cannot clear out a root canal in a satisfactory way. We in each tooth, and even not even the huge ones, there's actually 2 miles of tubules, 2 miles in each tooth of tubules, where there's a flow of, let's just say, fluid carrying the nutrition that you need. And if that gets reversed, which it actually does when you have sugar in the body, high levels of sugar in the body, you're not getting the nutrition, and then you start getting decay. So it's quite difficult to actually do a dental procedure when let's say the unwanted bacteria is completely cleaned out. So it's one area to look at. But when I often say to people, do you have any gum disease? And they go, no. And I say, do your teeth or your gums bleed when you clean the teeth? Oh, yes. And I'm thinking, well, that's actually gum disease. Your gums shouldn't bleed when you clean your teeth.
Yeah.
Vaccinations are very controversial subject at the moment, but there are ingredients in vaccines that shouldn't be in the human body. High levels of aluminium, of thimerosal, mercury, and at the moment very high levels of graphene oxide, and many other ingredients, which I won't go into now. But yes, they do color a child's health well into adulthood.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of books to read about this subject.
One very interesting and useful area, I think, is things like supplements, because, you know, in their modern world, people go there, they buy, you know, shelffuls of stuff and think, well, it's probably good for me. But I think the system you're using, you can actually check, can't you, and say, well, this is actually really good. This one you don't need. And it would probably save people money, I imagine, if you could know in advance what to buy and what not to, and even the correct dosage.
Absolutely. I mean, in terms of nutrition, more isn't necessarily better. It's actually about the bioavailability to the body, and if the body is actually absorbing them, and not taking in these synthetic forms of nutrition, which actually block the processes they're actually meant to be doing. So yes, absolutely. I mean, I don't recommend, everybody's report is different, of course, but I don't recommend necessarily huge amounts of nutritional supplements. Always the best is to, that's why they're called supplements, is to supplement a very good diet that is organic or even biodynamic. But even now these days, unless you're growing all your own food and you have mineral-rich soil, then you're not going to get the minerals and vitamins that you need necessarily.
Can you say something about your work, how you work with clients? You know, I think you have a way of working with them over a period of time. You mentioned something about that.
Yeah, because, and this goes back to the geopathic stress days, because I was starting to do follow-ups then. You know, I want happy clients. I want the results to speak for themselves. So when I do a set of health readings, as I did for you, what I do, and this is for two reasons, is that I monitor them for 6 months after a client has worked with me. And that is, one, to ensure that what I have suggested or recommended is only in the client's best interests, and that they are making a measurable recovery. Is if the readings start to go into reverse, then I know something's very wrong. It doesn't happen, not very often anyway. Also, because when you have somebody that's been chronically sick for a long time, say with ME or chronic fatigue syndrome, people don't necessarily know or can't feel when they're getting better, because they've been in that out of balance sick state for so long. And they'll come back to me and say, well, I'm not feeling any better. I'm not feeling any different at all. And because I'm measuring things like absorption rate of nutrients, or a detox of specific chemicals or toxins from the body, and I can see that the absorption rate has gone up, or the absorption rate of minerals through a cell membrane or into a cell has gone up, I can say, well, you're not necessarily going to feel these in your body, but this is what's happening at ground state level. Because clients can see these readings edging up and edging up and edging up over a period of 6 months, it actually is a huge encouragement for them to keep going. And so that's the other important reading, and then because they'll say, and that's 3 months and I'm still not feeling better. And I said, well, could you detect a 20% absorption in your selenium? I don't think so, but this is what's happening, and you're on the way.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Well, anyone interested in your work, it's causativediagnosis.com. Do check out Elizabeth. And Elizabeth, it's lovely connecting with you. I think the work you're doing is brilliant.
Thank you. It was actually an honor to work with you, and thank you for letting me do it. And it was great fun as well, Steve.